It has changed or what? Yeah, that's not bad either. The UI changed a little bit. Anyway, I must be live right now. Hello everybody, welcome back, and it's time to start working on the feature. That's one of the last difficult one, I think, because after that on this project at least we will not find the things as hard. I mean, most of the difficult things they've been implemented. Just this is the last thing that's remaining, so let's just simply focus on it. And talking about this last one, that is the what this is called frame. So we have to just add this framing feature here, but there's one thing, and that is what all I have done so far. I've made this UI, so this frame is appearing, and once this frame actually appears, so we can select the frames and we can move the things here and there. That is okay, but we can even resize the frame itself, but the overall functionality is not done. This frame is not connected to this shape at all, so at least the logic is not written for that. And there is a problem doing this. I was talking about this to the AI and all. So as for right now, what we are doing, that let's talk about these both things, especially the group section. So when we grouped GROUPED, so when we grouped the shapes, so at that time what we did, when we grouped the shape, so first of all we had group IDs in all the shapes. So ultimately what actually happened, that as soon as I grouped them, so the first in the step number 1, what we did, we got the group ID. Let's just simply keep it simple. First of all, we got the group ID. Once we got the group ID, then we just simply once the group got created, got it, and once the group got created, we just simply saved this group's ID in all the shapes. So we just simply saved it in the shapes, so whichever shapes were there. So this is the first thing we did. Just after that, what we did, once this particular thing got done, so all the shapes, if they belong to a group, they have that group ID, as simple as that. So whenever we just clicked on any one of the shapes, so we checked the group ID. Later what we did, when we click on the shape, so we check the group ID. On the group ID, on the basis of this, we just create an object that has the key and value pairs. Come on, let's keep it here. And can I erase this, or let's keep it here, that will be better. So when we click on a shape, so we get the group ID from the shape, and we actually created an object of key value pair, and over there key is nothing but group ID, and when it comes to value, so value is nothing but the shape. So this is how it we were just done so far, right? So this much we covered till now, and after that, whenever we suppose clicked on the shape, so because we have this particular object, so we found the shapes, just a sec, group ID, and it is gonna be actually values and value, and that value is gonna be shapes array, because there are gonna be many shapes. So once we clicked on a shape, we got the group ID. So once we got the group ID, we will be able to find the shapes as well. So this way it's easy for us to just simply get the shapes. So suppose I started resizing, so once I actually start resizing, so I already know the group ID, and once because of course I clicked on the shape, so we have the group ID, and we know which group is actually selected, and then we can just simply resize that. And one thing that I'm missing here, that is once we click on any shape, so we got the group ID. Using the group ID, we got all the grouped shapes. Once we got all the grouped shapes, we actually created this object. Once this object got created, now when I first of all we grouped them. Okay, this particular thing was already done anyway, this thing over here. once we saved the IDs in the group before even that. Probably this is gonna be the zeroth part, because what we usually do that this is gonna be the second one. Probably over here I need to keep it. Yeah, so first of all I created the group ID saved in the shapes. After that I just got all the shapes and created a group ID and the value pair. So what it actually means, do I even need to do it right now? I just simply saved it, and now as soon as I click on the shape, so as soon as I click on the shape, this was right at the right place initially only. Probably this is where I need to keep it. So once I click on the shape, so we get the group ID. Once we get the group ID, we just simply need to create an object. Once the object is created and shapes are selected, now whenever I click on there again, because we already have the selected shapes, we can just simply resize them and all. So ultimately once we have the group IDs, and then I'll be able to get all the shapes. Once I got all the shapes, so I am gonna be setting selected shapes, because that particular group is created. So we are gonna be just simply setting the selected shapes, and that is it, the job is done. So simple thing is that first of all, whenever you are creating grouping the shapes, so first of all create a group ID, save that group ID in all the shapes, and after that next time onward, suppose this particular thing, or let's create it here. So this is it that we have, but I don't think group option is here anymore. Yeah, grouping option is not here, just framing option is here. In our case we are actually implementing this. So as soon as I group them, so what will happen, that once they are grouped, so now when I click on one of them, so because by clicking on the shape I can get the group ID. Once I got the group ID, so using that particular group ID, I will be looping through all the shapes. So using the group ID, I will be going through all the shapes, and once I go through all the shapes, I'll create an actually object of key value pairs, and the key is gonna be nothing but the group ID. Value is gonna be all the shapes that has that particular group ID. So this way we just simply create the key, ultimately an object, and after that the next time whenever we click on that for resizing or for probably moving here and there, so at that time, of course, as soon as we click on that, so the overall group is gonna be selected, and the selected shapes are gonna be just simply set. And when we start moving, lastly when we start moving or resizing, so at that time we have to change the preview shapes, and at the end whenever pointer up happens, so pointer up happens, at that time we are just simply gonna be save the changes in the state. So this is how it just simply goes on, and this is what we actually did in the group. There is difference. This grouping section is simple. At that time we even just created the group ID and we saved the group ID in all the shapes. We just created an object using those shapes only, so we didn't really have to store quite a lot of things separately. Apart from this particular thing, one more thing am I missing? Group IDs. This is done, that's fine. One more thing, what is the use of group IDs, like a state of group IDs? So when I click on a group, group IDs, one thing I'm missing, that is when it comes to the group, so whenever I'm clicking on them, so what am I actually doing, that is on pointer down selection. Whenever I'm clicking on the pointer down and clicked inside the current selection, suppose this is not something we are worried about, probably this is something we are worried about. So whenever we are clicking an unselected shape and that shape has group ID, and once that actually has the group ID, so we are getting all the grouped preview shapes, then we save it in the reference with use ref, and we set the set selected shapes IDs, and this is what is set. We are not really setting the group IDs, right? So set group id, set selected group IDs, and yeah, it's not really being used. Is this being used or not? So just a minute, give me a minute. Alright, let's simply continue. So what I was just simply saying that this grouping thing, is this even being used or not? So handle group selection. So handle group selection is whenever we are selecting at that time, this particular value is also being saved. The thing is that it has just the group IDs of all the selected shapes. So ultimately all the grouped IDs I have here. What is the benefit of having it here? The benefit is I have to check whether it's actually being used or not. So that's gonna be selected group IDs. So we are setting it here, that's fine. Set selected group IDs. Where is this coming from? This comes from this one. So we have used set selected group IDs. Use selected group IDs. Use selected group IDs. So okay, it turns out it's not being used anywhere, and it's obvious. Like what is obvious? Selected group IDs. Is this being used? This is done. Set. We are setting it here as well. Use the data store. Yeah, so it's not really being used anywhere. So group ID, selected group IDs, and this is quite common. Like why do you even need to have this? So I can actually go to the editor store, especially the things which are not being used, and especially after selecting we have frames here. I'm not even sure if I need to store it. This particular thing is definitely not being used. It doesn't mean that I'll get rid of it. I'll just comment, but can't comment it. So in that case, let's just have a log here. Can I have a log? Not being used. This particular thing is not being used. Later, if it is not really used, we'll remove it. As for right now, we are able to implement a grouping thing well. So I don't really think it is needed. This is the thing that I'm stuck with. What is the overall goal? This is what we did initially, right? That is good, and this is how the grouping is implemented. But let's talk about framing, because this is different from grouping. So first of all, let's make it smaller. Keep it here. So when it comes to framing, so what I'm actually thinking of that, what I've actually done so far. So when it comes to doing something, so first of all, framing. So we have shapes, right? So first of all, of course, framing shapes, the first step. And what I've done and what is the problem right now that we have to fix. And again, I'll have to dig deeper into it. Coming back to this, so first of all, I created the frame ID. Okay, so once we have the frame ID, if we selected some shapes and we actually created a frame around them, so that simply means all those shapes should have the frame ID. So we just simply saved this frame ID in all those shapes, or I must say selected shapes, right? And this section was the selected shape only. So this is easy. I mean, we have already done this particular part. Second thing that I did, that is creating each shape will have, not shape actually, this frame that we are gonna be creating. First of all, we just created the frame ID, and that just got saved in all the shapes. Apart from this particular thing, the frame that we are gonna be creating, that frame is not just a sort of imaginary thing, right? It is actual real shape that we will have, the way we have it here, frame around that. So, and this is the real thing, so that simply means this frame is actually gonna be a shape, first of all this thing. And once this frame is actually a shape, so we'll even have to keep sure that frame is always at the bottom, so that once the frame is always at the bottom, remaining shapes that are there, which can be up over that. And apart from this particular thing, if frame is an object, so object we are gonna be, if frame again a shape is nothing but an object, contains the data and all. So over here, of course, I'll have the ID, that's gonna be the frame ID that we just create. We'll have the type is gonna be frame, and we will have many more things in the sense we'll have data related to the frame, what's the width, what's the height, and all these things. So we'll have data like this. And lastly, we'll have child IDs, and that's actually gonna be an array. Okay, sort of like this. Okay, just to make it smaller would be better. Yeah, this zooming thing doesn't really work quite well here. Okay, that's fine. So we will have child IDs, and the benefit of having child IDs is again, these are the things that are implemented, but I'll even show what's the problem, because this doesn't really solve the overall thing that we wanna achieve. So we have the frame IDs. Ultimately, we have a frame. Once I created a frame, that frame itself has the child IDs. Child IDs in the sense the shapes that belongs to that particular frame. Okay, this is the thing that we've done. Now, once we have this much, now let's start try rendering. So suppose the first problem is that now from here onwards there are going to be challenges. What now, or the things need to be done. Challenges. What is the first challenge? The first challenge is that as soon as I click the shape, click the frame, once I click the frame, it should be selected. That is okay. Frame is gonna be selected, and that simply means once the frame is selected, we can set selected shape, selected shapes, because frame is also a shape, so that can be part of the selected shapes, as simple as that. And once it is part of selected shapes, we can draw the frame, as simple as that, once it becomes the part of selected shapes, right? So this thing I've already implemented. So if you actually have a look over here, so let me just get rid of this now, needed. Again, I think this deletion does not work for the frame, or what? Delete it. Okay, that's deleted. Why deletion wasn't working? Never mind. So this is the shape that I got. I can wrap it in a frame. Now it is wrapped in a frame. Now the text size is too big, forget about that. But this is wrapped in a frame. Now as it is wrapped in a frame, so what I want, there can be more shapes as well. It's not like, why am I not able to delete this? Delete. Shortcuts are not working. Insane. Probably shortcut only works for the shape. There's a bug here in the deletion part, but okay, let's just simply delete it from here. We can have many shapes. So this is the first one, this is the second one, and if I actually wrap them in a frame, so wrap in a frame, so it actually looks like this. What I want, that as soon as I click on this, so first of all, does it take some time? Oh, that's fine. So as soon as I click on the frame should be the part of selected shapes. That is the first thing. Then the frame should be rendering. So the frame is already rendering. That is why we have the border around this. At that time, these shapes that we have, they are not selected. They are the part of the shape, but that doesn't mean that they are selected. That is the first thing. Now this is okay. That's not really big problem. The problem occurs here that if I move the frame from one place to other place, the shapes inside the frame should actually be moving. That is something we have to figure out exactly how we can just accomplish this. Okay, this is it. And especially when we move the frame here and there, so what do we have? We have a drag offset. Now how can we accomplish this particular thing? That's the interesting thing. And this is the first issue, like exactly so moving the frame then along with shapes. This is the first one, like exactly how can it be done. And the second thing is that adding the shapes in the frame and all, and then once this is done, then selecting the shapes separately and moving or resizing. These are the things that we have to get done. Okay, we just know what we have to do, but how we have to do this last thing is not really big problem, because we can select the shapes separately. So the shapes can easily be selected separately and they can be resized easily, so that's not really big problem. And one more thing, probably this is okay, sort of done. And last thing can be keeping the shapes adding some effect when shapes are inside the frame, just sort of like this. These are the things that we have to do. Let's talk about this one. Of course we need to even talk to the AI regarding this, how it can be implemented. But coming back to this, moving the frame along with the shapes, we are able to move the frame, that is easy peasy. Frame is moving, we are not able to move the shapes. And the thing is that we can move them all together, but then all of them are selected. That's the problem, because in our selected shapes we have an array called selected shapes, right? Just like this. And in that selected shapes I have all the things which are selected. And what the hell? Okay, there was something wrong with this as well. How many issues I created. It's zoomed in, so when it is actually zoomed in, or I probably there is a fixed font size, and because of that thing it is causing the issue. Okay, never mind. Let's try delete this. I cannot delete this as well. That simply means fixing other things. I made it worse. Coming back to this, I'll fix these bugs. These bugs are not really a big deal. They can be easily resolved. Coming back to this main point. So what we are just simply saying that we have selected shapes, and if we select them all, so all of them are gonna be part of selected shapes, and that is why when we move, we are moving selected shapes. When we resize, we are resizing the selected shapes. So all the shapes are actually being resized. So this is not problematic. But what I want, when I select the frame, I just want my frame to be the part of selected shape. So just this frame should be part of the selected shapes. That is it, nothing else. And when I move my frame, part of the frame, they should be moving as well. But the question, the thing is that as soon as I click and move, so we are able to move because we have the drag offset. What is the drag offset? That's the distance between the point where my cursor is right now and the starting point of the shape. So if I clicked here, so the distance between here and here, that's the only thing, that's the drag offset. And the benefit of having the drag offset is that if I am actually moving from here to here, so if I know that it's been moved from here to here, so the starting points can be calculated using the drag offset. That's the main benefit of having that is. But now here's the problem. We know the drag offset for the frame. How about the drag offsets for the shapes? And the thing is that they are not even selected yet. And not only that, we need to know the drag offsets for all the shapes, right? So I clicked on this. Now I need to know the drag offset of this shape as well as this shape. Ultimately, the drag offset of each shape that belongs to that particular frame. So the one solution is that creating drag offset just for the shapes that belongs to the frame. This is one of the ways. I mean, what we are definitely doing the same thing with the groups. So whenever we are actually grouping the, suppose this is the first thing, this is the second thing, I clicked on them, I clicked it and I grouped them. As soon as they are grouped, why am I not able to select this? So many bugs. Congratulations. Reload the page. I fix one thing and break another one. Anyway, this is the main like important logic right now. Get it fixed and then we'll fix all the bugs. Group them. Once they are grouped, now we are able to move them. So as soon as I click on this, so what happens? Both the shapes get selected. Once both the shapes get selected, and we are even calculating the drag offset of for this shape as well as this shape, that is why we are able to move both together. Why? As per the logic, we are doing the same thing in the logic as well. So coming back to this, whenever we are clicking on a shape, whenever we are clicking on a shape on pointer down, so what do we do on pointer down? On pointer down, we check whether we actually click on a selected shape. By default, of course, we are not gonna be doing that, but on pointer down, selected shapes, there could be possibility the shapes are already selected. Having said that, the goal is not on that. When we click on an empty space. I mean, not empty space, but the no images shapes are selected by default. So when is already selected, if this is already selected, when I click on it, then the value becomes true. So if already not selected, so this is where, and when we select, we get the group ID. So once I clicked on this particular shape, I got the group ID of this particular shape. And once I got the group ID of this shape, using the group ID, I got all the shapes that has the same group ID. So I got the grouped preview shapes. And after that, what I'm doing, once I clicked on this, I got all the shapes and I saved them. So type is gonna be select, because those shapes are no doubt selected right now. And preview shapes are gonna be grouped preview shapes. Ultimately, all the shapes that belong to that particular group. We have grouped shapes. This is interesting because this actually contains the grouped shapes. It is an object that has the group ID as the key in the values. And why we are doing so? Because there can be many groups. It's not like we only have one group, right? At the end of the day, there can be many groups. So we need to, so what we are doing, this particular group, get grouped shapes, it will actually return an object that will be the record type. The string is, the key is gonna be string, that's gonna be nothing but the group ID, and the shapes array will have. So all the shapes that belong to that particular group. And we have the group bounds and the job is done. And then we are setting the selected shapes IDs. Selected shapes IDs in the sense all the shapes that belong to that particular group, they are gonna be the selected shapes, and we are just simply return after invalidating. We are returning from here. Invalidate does what? It just invalidates the previous shapes and re-renders the new shapes and all. Okay, coming back to this. Even if we have done this, where are we calculating the drag offset and how it's actually being done. Drag offset is really important, that is the first thing, but I haven't really done it here. Great. So if it hasn't been done here, I'm definitely creating that because I wrote the logic somewhere, but the code is so big that I myself forget. Start select interaction. This is just for the selecting. This is not the one, probably I'll have to go through it. Whenever we click on any image or shape, the drag offset is being calculated. Without it, how it can be even done? So on pointer down, let me do one thing. Drag offset, where is that? On begin move interaction, and where is this being called? This is called when we start moving. We start moving begin move interaction. That is okay. That simply means when the shape is selected, that's not called. Okay, when we actually click on a selected shape, then we calculate the drag offset, and once the drag offset is calculated, based on that drag offset, we just move the things here and there, as simple as that. So coming back to this, on pointer down, we will first of all check if there is a hit shape or not, and if there is the hit shape, in that case we got the selected shapes. If there are selected shapes by default, and if there are selected shapes, we are gonna be getting the group bounds. Once we have the group bounds, we get the resize handle. Once we have the resize handle, we check where we actually clicked, and this is where we start resizing the interaction and all. Wait, this is merely for the resize. When we clicked inside the current selection, and then we have if there is no hit shape. So when we click, we have to check whether we actually clicked on whether we clicked inside the selected interaction or we didn't click on anything at all. So first of all, we are checking this, that is fine. And then if we this never happened, that simply means we clicked on an empty space, or this logic is not at the right place. So why is this so? Look, when we click, either I can click on an empty space, or I can click on a shape, or I can click on a selection area, right? So what should be the priority here? If there is no hit shape, suppose I clicked, I'm checking for the selection area. If there is no selection area, suppose by default if there is no selection area, that simply means I'm clicking for the first time. So at that time, hit shape, we'll check for the hit shape, and at that time there's gonna be no hit shape, so this particular logic is gonna run. And if the shape is actually being hit, so at that time we are gonna be just simply starting the interaction and all. So that is something that will happen. The next time when I'm gonna click, so should I check for the hit shape or should I check for the selection area first? Of course selection area, I think this is at the right place. So that is why before even checking the hit shape, whether we actually clicked on any shape or not, we are actually checking whether we actually clicked on any selection area, because if we did, we have to start resizing from there on, and on the basis of that thing, once this is done, and then we are even checking that okay, we did this much, that's fine. We are checking the resize handle, if there's any resize handle or not. Resize handle, start resizing. Okay, so we are actually checking, it is just a check whether we actually clicked on any resize handle or not, because if we actually did, so we will start resizing from there on. And the second thing is that if we did not click on the resize handle, that simply means we are actually gonna move the shape, and when it comes to that, so start selection interaction, and that's the shape is actually gonna be moved. Clicked an unselected shape, if the shape is not selected, how does moving happen here? So this is it, this is the first thing, and when we clicked on that again, resize handle, if we clicked on that, of course that we are gonna be resizing, otherwise start selection interaction. So select preview shapes, group shapes, We have the selects, we have all the preview shapes, that simply means the selected shapes. We have the grouped shapes, that simply means all the shapes that belongs to that particular group if we have some. And we have group bounds, and we are just invalidating it from here. This returning true doesn't really make any sense, so let's just simply get rid of this. This much is fine. And once we actually start moving, right, so this particular thing is done. So far we haven't really calculated any drag offset. The drag offset actually being calculated when we move the mouse. That's insane. Usually drag offset should be created when we click, so that we actually know the drag offsets of all. And there's another thing, after clicking we can just do the pointer up as well. So if we are not really moving, what is the use of creating the drag offset? Okay, let's see. It is actually being created when the mouse move happens. That simply means not on this part, rather on this particular part. So this is where the drag offset is actually being created, and that's not a bad idea as well. Like when you click down, the type is gonna be selected. The type is actually select, and when you actually move the shape a little, so when is dragging is true, at that time you just begin move interaction. Beginning moving interaction in the sense, okay, the mouse has moved, time to get the drag offset. So over here we create an object, again the string, and this string is gonna be nothing but the key if I'm not wrong, and the points are gonna be the drag offset. So what we do, that we just simply loop through all the shapes. Again, they are the selected shapes that are selected as of right now. And once we have this, so from the current point I just simply get the distance, so the point minus preview shape dot x. So the shape's starting point minus the current point, that is the distance that we get between those 2 points, and that's the drag offset that we have. And then we just simply save the drag offset in the pointer move. So this drag offset object is actually saved. So at the end of the day, in the interaction section, we are saving the preview shapes, grouped shapes, drag offsets we are saving here. We can have frame offsets as well. Think about it. Let's this is the story of the grouping thing and all, but the same logic can be implemented, or we actually have to implement if we want to move that. Let's talk about grouping, framing. So let's get 2 shapes here. Wrap in a frame, they are wrapped in a frame. Now once I select a frame, so I need to, as soon as I clicked on this, or doesn't matter, again when I click the second time, at that time we have to do it. So when I click the second time, and doesn't matter, but yeah, again I need to click on the frame, not on the shape. I think that's how it's done. Let me check it here. Frame, create frame. The frame is created. Yeah, don't click directly on the shape, rather click on the frame and then move it here and there. Coming back to this, so once I click anywhere, so I have to get the offsets of all the shapes from the current point which belongs to that frame. So once I click on that, I have to do this. Okay, so if the type is definitely gonna be select initially, right? The type is definitely gonna be select. We have to calculate the drag offset. That is good. We have dx and dy, and that is just for the testing point. That's fine. We begin the interaction move from here. Once we actually begin the interaction move, we have the interaction, we have the point, and we have the preview interaction dot preview shapes. Interaction dot preview shapes. Think about it. Interaction dot preview shapes. Either I'm gonna have another object, or I'm gonna be using this. I'm thinking of maintaining an object that will store the value of the offset so that it can actually be later used. As for right now, we have interaction dot preview shapes. This is nothing, interaction is nothing but a ref that I've created, and inside that I have many values. Inside interaction, is it okay to store inside this? So what is happening if I go to pointer state right now? Pointer state. So inside pointer state we have interactions, we have type none, we have draw, we have select, we have move, we have resize, and all these things. What I want that I'm gonna have one more thing here inside interaction, and what is gonna be that? I'll have frame offset. When we move, at that time we need it, right? Okay, because when we resize, at that time we don't need offset, because we can get the scale, the difference between the we can get the difference ratio of the width and height, and then we on the basis ultimately we can get the scale ratio, and then we can increase or decrease the size of others. So only during move we need the drag offset. So this is the first thing. I'm going to have one more thing here, and what's gonna be that? We have drag offset. Let's name it better. Group drag offset, frame drag offset. Grouped shapes drag offset, and frame shapes. What's gonna be the better name? Yeah, just a minute. Let me ask AI what's the better name. A drag offset doesn't clear which one it belongs to. Suggest other names so that I know whether it belongs to grouped shapes or framed shapes. Okay, so I agree. Multi-selection division. Even we can have multi-selection at the end of the day. When it comes to having multi-selection, so I completely ignored this one. Multi-selection. For multi-selection, I think we are storing the drag offset already. The name should add it. So selection drag offsets, selection offsets, frame child offsets. We'll have group drag offsets, and we'll have frame offsets, drag offsets. So group drag offsets, if it belongs to group drag offsets, and then it belongs to, okay, that's fine. And apart from this particular thing, the thing that I completely ignored, that is the drag offset of a group. What is that called? Yeah, come on. Drag offset of a selection area. So when the shapes are actually selected, so that is should be getting done. And where is that done? Is that getting done here when we are clicking down? Because that is something I'm doing too, I know. And even for that thing we have this particular function, create resize interaction data. This thing is that where it's been used. This is being used inside start resizing interaction. Where is this being used? This is being used inside the on pointer down. Great. So on pointer down, whenever we start resizing interaction, how often it is used? Second, third, 1, 2, 3. So we handle it twice, and coming back to this, we create resizing interaction data. That is fine. And over here the data is actually being created. So here we have these three things: initial font sizes, free draw points, line resize states. It simply means I don't have that. initial font sizes, feeder points and design, they are just for resizing. So create resize interaction data, so that is just for the resizing. So the question is that how is this working now? It was me who implemented this, but this thing works because we have drag offset and we are able to move it here and there. Simple, easy peasy. How does this work when we actually select many and we move? That simply means all of them are the selected shapes, and if all of them are the selected shapes, so I need the drag offset for all of them, because without the drag offset how can I even just move them here and there together? So once I click on any point, I'm calculating the drag offsets for all the shapes. Where am I doing it? I'm definitely doing it somewhere. It's all about where. And to check it, I can directly go to inside move shapes, because I must be using it there. So inside move shapes, whenever we just simply update, so when we update interaction.drag offsets, here we are. We have it here. When we move, we have the drag offsets. This is insane. That's the same object drag offset we are using. So the same drag offset is being used here. So in that case, we have a drag offset for the selected shapes. All are selected, aren't they? Yeah. So selected shapes drag offset, and we can have framed shapes drag offsets, because even if that is a group, even if this is a group, but they are selected now, as simple as that, and that is why I'm able to move them. So the drag offset that I actually have, so whenever we start resizing the selected shapes, at that time we calculate it. So this calculation is actually being done here. So on pointer move, whenever pointer move happens, so when we begin interaction, at that time we get all the preview shapes in the sense all the selected shapes that we actually have, and then we actually calculate the drag offsets for all the shapes, and hence we get the drag offsets, and that drag offsets is actually just simply saved here. Now the name can be selected shapes drag offsets. Let me see. What if I name selected shapes drag offsets? If it is, and we'll have to selected shapes drag offsets and framed shapes drag offsets. Selected shapes drag offsets. So let's just simply go with this. We wanna have a name such as it's clearly telling us what it does. So in that case, I'm just gonna modify this, and at the same time we are gonna have one more drag offset, and that's gonna be framed shapes drag offsets. So two types of offsets are gonna be there, because when it comes to frame, so if I'm actually clicking on a frame, we are not really selecting them, right? So they are not selected, but they belongs to a frame, so we need to have, and then slowly it's gonna be working. So we have to come to this. We have this whenever we move, so this one should be selected shapes drag offsets. This is the first thing. The same way we need to have one more, framed shapes drag offsets, because framed shapes, they are not selected. We are not selecting the framed shapes, and hence we need to maintain their offsets separately. And why do we need to have the offsets? So that we can move them, of course. That's the most common thing. Okay, so this is it that we have here, and again let's just simply change this everywhere wherever it's just simply required to be changed. And just a sec, I'd like to go to that state again, pointer state. I have to restructure my code. This is good to have, like it's not like it's structured in a bad way, but there's a better way, structuring based on the interaction, exactly what you are doing, all the code related to that should be at one place. That's something I'm thinking of implementing later. Interaction, we are removing it from here as well. So why am I getting this error? Move, we have selected shapes, drag offsets, selected shapes, drag offsets, this we are just simply adding the values there based on the preview IDs and all. Framed, okay, is declared here. Framed offsets. So when it comes to framed offsets, it can be just an empty object as well, can't it be? So it is just simply telling me that, bro, you have to just simply have it here too, and this should be fine. By default, framed offsets is just gonna be an empty object. It will not have anything as such because frames are not, I mean shapes are not framed, selected. Later if we select, again there can be many cases that we still have to handle, but suppose what happens in future that we have one shape, so we have this. If we have more than one shapes, frames, so because this is an object, the key is gonna be ID of the frame. The values are gonna be, what is gonna be the value? The value is gonna be the drag offset of for those shapes. So using the ID of those shapes, we can just simply get it. So even if there are multiple, not the ID of the shape, rather the ID of gonna be the ID of these shapes. So if there are many frames, so it doesn't really matter because the shapes which those frames have, the IDs of those shapes are gonna be different. Hence ID and the offset we can store of all the shapes, and then we can just simply get it done. Easy, it can be done. Okay, so this much we've done. What is the next thing that we have to do? The next thing is that actually saving the framed drag offset, because we are not doing that yet. Okay, fine. So in that case, when we begin to move interaction, at that time we get the preview shapes. As I got the preview shapes, right, I calculated the drag offset for that particular shape. Any problem? No problem. It should definitely be done. One thing that we have to do here, get the child IDs or child shapes, children shapes, or a child name it, whatever name it, doesn't really matter. So child shapes for a frame shape if exists, then calculate the drag offsets for all the child shapes and save it. This is what we have to do. So const framed shapes drag offsets. Again, this may not exist as well, right? There could be possibility that there are no framed shapes. So what we'll do, we'll just say, okay, by default you will have an empty object. So if there is no framed shape, so in that case we'll say, okay, there's nothing, so keep it an empty object. But if there is a shape, though preview shape that I'm getting, that preview shape can be any shape, rectangle, circle, ellipse, anything, but it can even be what? It can be a frame. So what can I do? If preview shape dot type, if that triple equals to, these are the types that can be frame. If that is a frame, so what I'll do, if that is a frame, const framed shapes. Now this should be running when I have more than one child elements. Just think about it. If there is a frame, there are child elements. But what if I delete all those child elements? That simply means there could be possibility that there are no child elements at all. So I have to check that if preview shapes dot child IDs dot length, if the length is actually triple equals to 0, that simply means there are no children, so just simply return from here. But if they are, there are, so in that case const will get framed shapes one by one, framed shapes, and what are gonna be there. So we have child IDs, right? So const framed shapes IDs. So new set, let's create a set. Having said that, it's not like there can be duplicate IDs and all, but it's good to just simply create set here. So framed shapes IDs, and set will have preview shape dot child IDs, right? So child IDs is actually an array, and if we are just simply giving an array to this, so yeah, that's fine. So ultimately a set will be created. Come on, coming back to this, once we have a set, so framed shapes are gonna be what? Framed shapes. To get the framed shapes, we actually have to loop through the array shapes. Do we have that here? We don't have. So let's just simply get it at the top. So we need to have one more thing here. And as we are doing what? From there, we can directly get the shapes as well here. We can directly get the shapes here, and once we directly get the shapes, I think set selected shapes IDs, we can directly get the shapes like this as well. Why am I using this here? Use selection actions whenever I'm using this. So as for this one, set selected shape IDs, I can get rid of it actually, and I can just simply subscribe those states manually. So first one is gonna be set selected shapes IDs, and that's gonna be use set selected shape IDs. This is the first one. Const shapes, I'm just thinking if it is gonna be the right or not. Once we frame them, so the shapes already exist, that simply means it should work. So use shapes, this is how it can be done. When we have the shapes, then I can be back here, shapes dot, now we have to filter. Once we filter, so I'm gonna be getting the shape. Once I'm actually getting the shape, we have framed shapes IDs, so we actually have the IDs of the shapes. So I can say framed shapes IDs has shape dot ID. That simply means that frame should be filtered, and that is the framed, they are the framed shapes. And once we have the framed shapes, we have to do what? We have to calculate the offsets. So framed shapes dot for each, or let's go with the same way, the way it's actually being implemented here. So for const framed shape now of framed, again it depends exactly which way you gonna go with, both are gonna work. This is just a loop, you can use any loop for that sake. I'm just simply trying to implement the same the way it's being implemented here. Now once we have this, so what we'll do, framed shapes drag offset, again we need to have the ID of what? ID of the shape. So framed shape dot ID, and then we need to store the drag offset for them. So x is gonna be point dot x, that's the current point, minus the starting point of the that particular shape, and that is gonna be framed shape dot x, and y is gonna be point dot y minus framed shape dot y, and that is it. Great. So what happens here? We are even setting here. So calculate the drag offsets for the frame, calculate the drag offsets for the selected shapes, and they are gonna be for the framed shapes. As simple as that. Even if they are grouped, they are still the selected shapes. Okay, fine. calculate offsets. This is done. Then here we are just simply saving the values. What is the good thing that we've done here? Then we start moving the mouse again depending on the need. We just simply begin in the interaction, and now what will happen that when I move the shape this time, so again the interaction dot selected drag offsets. So when I'm moving the shape, so we are updating. What we are updating? We are actually updating the this is gonna be interesting because we have to make many changes here. This logic is for what? This logic is for the selected shapes. So interaction dot previous shapes, that are nothing but the selected shapes. Map, we are just simply mapping through them, and we are just simply changing their drag offsets as the mouse is moving here and there. Great. Is this it? It turns out to be not, because now we have to check one thing, that while I'm doing this, the shape that I'm actually getting at that time, here I need to do one more thing. Update the drag offsets of the framed shapes as well. We are updating it for the selected shapes, so update drag offsets of the selected shapes. That's fine, right? And we have to update because framed shapes, a frame is a shape, so that's gonna be one of the shapes of the preview shapes. Once I know that if the preview shape that I actually have, or just the shape that I actually have, is a shape dot type, if that's triple equals to frame, in that case what do we have to do? We have to change the drag offsets of all the child shapes as well. To get that, we need to have the child shapes. So can we copy paste the same logic we just had here? So selection, when we begin move interaction, at that time here I had this logic. Can I copy it, and can I go back to this? Can I paste it here, and let's see. So again we have to change many things. So first of all we will check that, okay, preview, नारे बाबा ऐसे भी नहीं, 1 2 का 4, that is it. So let's keep it shape. So if a shape dot child id is, if that's triple equals to 0, that simply means frame doesn't have any children, and that is definitely possible. You can remove the children from the shape frame. And after that framed shape IDs we got, and after that we are getting the shapes as well. Shape does not really exist here. Interesting. So let's just simply get the shapes as well. So fonts, shapes, use shapes, just like this. We are gonna have shapes here, and once we actually have the shapes, so now what is the thing that we have to do? What needs to be done? The drag offset needs to be removed. So earlier we calculated the drag offsets. Now if we want to get the point back, so x minus framed, that's what we are doing, current point minus this, to get the drag offset. Okay, fine. So yeah, so we are getting the framed shape. Once we got the framed shape, what do we have to do? So think about it, yeah. That what are we actually setting at the end? We are setting this preview shapes. That's gonna be problematic. Why? Think about it. We have these framed shapes. Where they are coming from? They are actually coming from an array. So if we just change those framed shapes here, will the array be changed or not? I think the array should be changing, right? Yeah. So if I am saying it like this, like I have the framed shape, so framed shape dot x, and we have to do what? We have to actually subtract the offset that we have. Now the offset for that particular shape, because the offset that we are actually getting here, this is the drag offset. This will be selected shape drag offset, selected shape drag offset. This is the, we are subtracting the selected. Okay, that's fine. We have to do the same thing here, but we need to use the drag offset of the frame. So in that case we have the framed shapes, so that simply means I have even the IDs. Once we have the IDs, so in here const framed shape drag offset, and that's gonna be equals to interaction dot frame shape offsets framed shape dot id. So this way we'll get the offset for that particular shape, and then we are gonna be doing framed shape drag offset. We are gonna be just simply subtracting it dot x. Of course it can even be undefined, so in that case I have to make sure that if I don't, as you move from here and there, so at that time you need to recalculate the values, and so current point minus the drag offset will actually calculate the x and y points at that time. Frame drag offset y. So I just hope that it actually changes the value of the shape directly, because if it doesn't, we'll have to set the shape right here. So this is something we'll have to do if it doesn't get done automatically. So this is gonna be a to do, check if it works, and I just hope it works, because let's try it here. A simple example, that const object, I have ARR 1, that's gonna be 1 1 2 3, ARR 2 4 5 6, obj we have this. Now if I get obj of 0 index, that's actually const ARR, we actually have to create an array, because at the end of the day we are playing with the arrays, right? So in the array we'll have objects. A is gonna be 1, B is gonna be 2, another one, A is gonna be 3, B is gonna be 4. Already ARR of 0 will be this. Now ARR of 0th index dot A is gonna be 5, suppose. So ARR of 0th index, the value actually changes, right? Why it changes? Because the reference is the same. So when we are actually saying that ARR of 0, so ultimately the reference for that particular object, so ARR 0 have the same reference of this object. So that is why when I say this dot this, so it will return us the same reference, and hence the value is going to be updated. As simple as that. First of all, we have the same array. Not only that, apart from having the same array, even if I got them using the IDs, I have the same array. Same array means if I update the value, so the rear of, yeah, it should work. Ideally it should work, but we'll see if it doesn't work. Anyway, once we are here, preview shapes. Shape or undefined is not assignable to shape. Undefined is not assignable to this. So the updated shape can actually be undefined. So coming back to this, we are actually returning. That's bad actually. If I don't have the just continue. And similarly over here, if I don't have the child, I am just simply gonna continue draw. What is the issue? If that's equals to frame, and if I don't have this, then return. And when we are just looping through all the frames, at that time if I don't have the drag object for that particular shape, doesn't mean that I have to stop looping through other ones. So we have to just simply continue from here. And the updated shapes, because of this return I am having this issue. That is right. So what I will do, that bro, instead of returning from here, all the logic that I have in here, that should be running only when I have it. As simple as that. Then it's not gonna be problematic. And let's see. Yeah. So when checking it, at the end of the day, I'm invalidating. Time to check it. It's not working. Okay, let's reload the page one more time. This, of course I should be able to move them. I should be able to resize them. Let's wrap them in a offset. There's an issue. Calculate drag offsets, preview shapes. It's not iterable. Something is missing. When do we get that here? Fix the bug. Fix the bug. So when we move it for the first time, okay, it's not iterable. That simply means when we move it for the first time, there is no frame. Interesting. And that is right. How about a normal shape? Yeah, the thing is that, got it. What is actually happening here, that once we actually draw any shape, the shape is already selected and we can even do it like this, but when it comes to frame, it doesn't really work that way. So we have to fix this bug. So once it comes to frame, so I need to select that and then I can just simply move it here and there. If I try doing it directly, it doesn't work. So I have to enable this. What do I have to enable? That as soon as I click on the shape and start, so when pointer up happens, at that time the shape gets selected, what I want. Just clicking should be doing that. One again challenge, call it a task. That is, there are many bugs. First of all, even when we just simply select it somehow, when we move it, the shapes are not being moved. So we have to check why is their offsets are not being changed. And the answer is simple, that okay, fine, we know why it's happening. I know why it's happening, because whenever I'm rendering, so at the time I just simply render the selected shapes. I'm not actually rendering these separately, so I need to write the logic for this as well. So it's at least clear that why it's not working, because we are not rendering re-rendering the children element, and that is something can easily be done. So take it easy, we can do it. But again, coming back to this, I want to select it when point is down happens. So the frame is not being selected when point down happens. Other shapes are just directly being selected. Frame. Selection actions. Coming back to this. On pointer down. There we are. So what is happening here? On pointer down, whenever I click, and if the shape is not hit, even this is not the one. If I clicked on unselected shape, so selected shape ID is hit shape.id. Great, it's just being set there. And we are just simply making this group ID is gonna be this. If there is a group, then we are doing this. If clicked on a frame, selected. Okay, interesting. So what do we have to do? Selected framed shapes. Framed shapes. I'm doing quite a lot here. This much doesn't really need to be done. Rather, I need to simplify the logic, and that simplify logic is simple. Remove it. Why do we need to remove it? The thing is simple. Frame is nothing but a shape, so that is it. So on pointer down it is selected. Again, reloading the page. Frame. We even have to make it better, good looking. Anyway, wrap in a frame. Now when I click on the frame, just clicking makes it selected, and then we can move it. So just after clicking we can move it. We don't really need to do mouse up and all. That is great. Now the second thing, what is that? That second thing is that I have to re-render all these images. This is something needs to be done. And let's go back to renderer, because renderer is responsible for rendering. This is the last thing, and I think after that we still have to fix many things, but at least we are able to select this, we are able to move it, we are able to move it, we can select it all, we can move them here. The only thing is that once I select this, then I should be able to move other shapes as well along with this. So we already have the overall data ready, we just have to implement this. So the renderer will just simply render it, and renderer renders it, right? So what do we need to do? This is gonna be the part of the overlay. First of all, this okay. That simply means one more thing I need to just get done here. Again, let's write the logic, because that issue we will face, and when we face, we'll resolve this. What do we need to do first? The first thing is pretty simple, that render overlay. There are two canvases I have right now. I have the scene canvas and I have the overlay canvas. The region is, again, it's gonna take time, but ultimately I have two canvases. When I edit something, so I use overlay canvas, and when I have to render something static, at that time I use the scene canvas. Having said that, let's come back here and render shapes. Render shapes, just a sec. Now it's gonna be interesting. Why it's gonna be interesting, bro? Because when it comes to rendering the shapes, we are getting the preview shapes. They are what? We are just simply rendering the preview shapes. Preview shapes in the sense the ones which are selected. How about the ones which are part of a frame? Interesting. So we just simply pass the preview shape here, right? So there are two ways. The first way is this, that when I'm rendering them over here, I'm actually passing the shapes here. So ultimately I have the shape. So the shape can be the frame as well. So we are just simply passing the shape. Over here, what can we do? That when we are actually rendering the frame, and I think this is the right place to do it, at that time we have to render the framed shapes, and I think this is the best place to do it. how can we do it? Let's just simply have a look at this. So first of all, what we are doing, this is the place where we are actually rendering the frame, and probably let's do it from here at the bottom. Why at the bottom? Because the frame should be at that bottom. That is why we are rendering it first, and the shapes should be on top of that. So the shapes are gonna be rendered later. That is something we are doing here. Now we already have the shape has child IDs. Once we have child IDs, we can get the shapes. To get the shapes, we can directly get it from there. That's fine as well. So const use editor store get state. Done. We can get the shapes from here, and we are doing it because we are getting the shapes directly from the store, because in this project we are handling the rendering manually. So we are not depending on the state actions. We are not depending on the values derived from the state. Rather, we are manually getting the values because we are manually rendering it. That's the main reason behind it. Let's just simply get rid of it. We have the shapes, we have the child IDs. Once we have the child IDs, let's just simply render the framed shapes. So const framed shapes IDs, music, and child IDs are gonna be here. Once we have this, then what do we need to do? Let's just have this logic at the top. That would be better, and we will just simply focus on rendering here. So we have this const framed shapes, now framed shapes. So we have the shapes, right? Shapes dot filter, we'll get the shape. Once we have the shape, if framed shapes dot id has the shape dot id, in that case we have the framed shapes. Once we have the framed shapes dot we have the frame shapes. Can I call it render shape directly here? So frame shape is rendering the shapes. They are gonna be shapes. Okay, great. Render shapes. I'm calling that's the insane thing, the most insane thing ever. That is calling the render shapes inside the render shape. Wow. And will it be okay or not? Yeah. Calling it, that simply means render shapes will start rendering it again, but the next time it will not find any frames. It may even find out. That is a good thing. Never expected it to be turned out to be like this, but at the end we have a context here. CDX, we have shapes. They are gonna be shapes are gonna be equals to framed shapes. The scale is gonna be this. Skip IDs, we don't really wanna skip anything, so that's fine. Should we try it? I hope it's gonna work. Nah, it's not working. We'll see it exactly how it's not working. Okay, it doesn't seem to be working. So what is the issue? Probably whenever we are rendering something, we need to invalidate it manually. Again, we cannot invalidate it here. So calling render shape is not enough because it's not being invalidated, and that's gonna be problematic. Fine. In that case, we need to do something now. We have this proper renderer. We are actually clearing the canvas, and then we are calling this render shapes. it is just simply rendering the shapes and all, and this is how things are getting done. What we are doing, what we want ideally, that I'm gonna render the shapes, then there can be a frame in the shapes, so if there is a frame, I'm gonna render those framed shapes as well, as simple as that. But when it comes to this rendering those frame shapes at the end, in the sense invalidating everything again, because if I render those frame shapes again, so rendering those frame shapes, should I really be okay, that's crazy now, it's getting too much. Oh, we are doing it here, but I'm not really sure that this is actually being called, and let's see if this particular logic is actually running or not. We need to debug it. That's a lot that needs to be handled. Rendering frame shapes. Because they are the framed shapes, so we are getting the previous values. Because if we have the normal ones, we don't face this issue. We only face this issue with the framed shapes. That's fine. So if they are the framed shapes, I have to just simply remove them from there. We are not able to render them. The first problem can be easily be resolved, but how about this render shapes? So we need to clear the canvas. Oh, come on, think about something. Oh, what do we need to do? Drawing rectangle and diamond, right? Drawing diamond, drawing the rectangle, wrapping them in a frame. So rendering child shapes, and just below that we are rendering these, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, even if they are being rendered, their positions are not changing. Is that so? We have the framed shapes. I have to see when I'm actually moving it, whether the positions of these shapes is actually changing or not. Let's go to Redux. This is fine. Editor restore, and we have to take care of the shapes. So let's draw a few ones. This is the first one. This is the second one. We have two shapes here. Let's spin it. Once we actually have two shapes, let's spin the first one. And in the first one, I mainly wanna check the value of x and y. So let's just spin it. So now if I'm moving this, not this here. So as I'm moving, the value is not changing. Whenever the pointer up happens, at that time the value is actually changing, because on pointer up the values are actually being saved. This is something we have to stop from happening. Set interesting. So ultimately this is not gonna work as expected. I have to save it because it's actually being saved on pointer up. That's not something I want, and because I think what I think shapes I'm actually directly getting from there. Okay, so let's make it simpler. Because that's gonna be too much actually. Too much in the sense, so as I move, there are gonna be shapes. Ultimately, what's gonna happen here, that the logic could be simpler, but I'm making it more and more complex. Because when we are updating the shapes, ultimately this particular section is gonna run, and this particular section is mainly responsible for changing the x and y coordinates of the shapes only. That's fine, but one shape can have many shapes, and at that time it needs to handle that. So the one thing that I'm actually doing here, that I just have the IDs, and that is fine. On pointer up the actually value changes, but in here we do this. So this is definitely working, but the problem is that it happens only on pointer up. As we move, we need to have something that can be used, framed preview shapes. One more state we need to create, and that is gonna be framed preview state. Why? So that I can actually change the value of that on the go. I don't want to call set shapes over and over, because it's gonna be too expensive. Probably because of this board is even not, I won't even be able to draw the things well. So what I want, that when we move, right, just at that time, so when I move, in this particular case, I have framed offsets, and by default we have preview shapes. I want to have one more thing, and they are gonna be framed preview shapes. This is something I want to do as well. Again, I'll have to change the logic a lot, but overall it will be an array of shapes. So all the shapes are gonna be in this particular ref, so I just need to change it on the go, and when the pointer up actually happens, at that time I can change the value of the state, main state. That simply means when we are setting the drag offset, at the time I need to set this now. Yes, so I need to go to this again, and where are we? Whenever the pointer down happens, probably let me have a look at from where we actually have to start now. Another way to just simply handle the thing. So whenever the pointer down actually happens, so at that time if we actually click on a shape that's not already clicked, then set selected shapes ID, we just simply set the selected shapes here. and preview hit shape is gonna be this, and we set these values. What are these values? We have preview shapes, and then if that belongs to a group, so in that case we are actually sharing the preview shapes ultimately that's getting saved. What do we have to do here? Preview shapes, just a sec. Is this the right way? One thing is clear, that we need to store the preview shapes, but what should be the way? Because the way we are thinking of storing the preview shapes, so at this point of time I have all the shapes which belong to all the frames, right? So I won't be able to differentiate, right? So I need to do the same thing again here. I actually need to create a record this time. The type is gonna be string, and the value is actually gonna be a shapes array. So I'll actually have an object. The key is gonna be the frame ID, so that using the frame ID I can actually get its all child IDs. Just think about it. What is needed and what's not. When I'm rendering the shapes, so frame will already have the child IDs. If the frame already has the child IDs, I can update the value of that then and there. So the value of the child can easily be updated. We don't need to have it, that's fine, because a frame has the child IDs. So even if we are gonna have the child over here which belongs to many shapes, we can still many frames, we can still find the right shape using the shape ID, and that shape ID belongs to the frame already has an array, so that will work fine. Come back here. So if we actually click on this, so at this point of time, if I actually clicked on not selected shape, so the first of all, if there's only one, so the shape is gonna be selected, that's fine. And once the shape is selected, what do we need to do? We need to do one more thing. What is that? Hit a shape that we have. So ultimately preview hit shape that we have to check its type. That is a group, that is fine if it has a group ID. One more thing, what is that? If check if it's a frame shape. So if preview hit shape dot type that's super equals to frame, in that case what do we have to do? It happens when the pointer goes down. So at this time we have to get all the child IDs. Once we get all the child IDs, we have to just simply save them, and this mainly happens on pointer move. So right now it's just gonna be pointer select, so we don't really need to have the value of that, right? Yeah, that's fine. So it doesn't need to be done here, because at the end of the type is actually gonna be select. So what's the use of saving the frame shapes select while selecting? Let's save them while moving. So on pointer move, begin move interaction, and when we actually begin move interaction, so we get the shapes and we get the selected shapes. Once we get the selected shapes, not this one, yeah, on pointer down, this is not it. On pointer move interaction, begin move interaction, this one, and when we are beginning this, so at this time what do we have to do? We have the we are already storing the value of the frame offset, so no need to worry about this as such. So this particular thing is done. Here we are calculating the drag offsets. Then we need to have one more thing, and that's gonna be framed preview shapes. The question is that how will I get it? Framed preview shapes, right? So here we have the framed shapes. These are the ones. So we have to store these. So at the end of the day, const framed preview shapes, and that's gonna be, hopefully that's the name, framed preview shapes. That's gonna be an array. And just here what do we have to do? When we are previewing all the shapes, at that time if a shape has type frame, that simply means it has framed shape id each. That simply means it has framed shapes, and once it has framed shapes, we are gonna be doing this. That is okay. But framed preview shapes is gonna be equals to framed shapes. Let's make it lit over here so that it can values can be reassigned. Once we have this, we are actually gonna be setting it here. Implicitly has any type, in that case shape of this, no issues at all here. Once we have done this, so now we have the framed shapes, right? As we have the framed shapes, we can change the values directly. We'll see what happens on mouse up, but before that, whenever we are moving the mouse, now what can we do? When it comes to doing right, fine. So updated shapes, and they are being saved here directly. So we are updating the shapes. And we even have interaction dot we have interaction dot preview shapes, and we even have interaction dot framed preview shapes, and we even have to update the value of framed preview shapes. And now what do we need to do? As I already have those values, and having those values means I just need to get the value of the frame. So if the type is the frame, right, just a sec. So if the type is the frame, that simply means we have the frame ID of that particular shape. So at this point of time, we have to change the value of this framed preview shapes. So instead of doing this in here, what do we need to do? The interaction that I have to directly change the value in the interaction. Comment this, and the next thing that actually needs to be done here, that I have the framed shapes. Yes, interaction dot preview framed preview shapes, because framed preview shapes actually has all the shapes. So we can just derive the framed shapes from there. That belongs to the current wrong. We have the IDs. We have all the children. Great. It would be good as well. Let's remove this part from here. We have to get the framed shapes, right? So preview shapes dot interaction dot filter shape, and that's gonna be so what should be the logic? Interaction dot framed preview shapes dot filter. We have to filter the value. All of them are the framed shapes. So now if the shape dot id, that's triple equals to shape dot id. Oh, that's insane. Framed shape. So if framed shape dot id triple equals to shape dot id, that simply means the current one. No, that's gonna be wrong. How can be this equals to this? So framed shape dot frame id. If shape's frame id is equals to the shape id, that simply means that is the framed shape of this particular frame. Okay, now we have the framed shapes. Once we have the framed shapes, at that time we have framed shapes, right? Const updated framed shapes. And now I'm still thinking whether this is the best way or not, because if a frame is moving, so even if a frame moves a little, we are calculating the shapes for others. Yeah, I think that's fine, because overall the calculation is not gonna be too much. There are gonna be few shapes and it can easily be recalculated. Let's see. Updated frame shapes. So interaction dot framed preview shapes. Is that so? There's an issue. What is that? We are looping through them. We'll get the new shapes. Okay, let's continue with this. Dot. We have to just simply change the values. So we'll just go ahead like this. So, framed shape. Here we are. Once we have this, so we'll get the offset for that particular shape. So const framed shape drag offset, framed shape drag offset, that's gonna be equals to interaction dot framed shapes drag offsets framed shape dot id. Once we have this, then what do we need to do? Even I'm using this interaction over and over, so probably I need to keep it simple, but okay, let's make it work first of all. So I have framed shape drag offsets. It's gonna, and later I'm just simply gonna return y minus framed shape drag offset y. Again, if I do not have the value of the framed shapes, so it's better not to assign to it directly here. Once everything is done, then assign. That's also fine, not problematic thing. So let's get rid of this and let's make it this much, and I'm gonna be storing the value of it at the top here. Let this framed shapes an array. So we'll get the value there. Once we have the value in there, preview shapes. What is the interaction? Interaction is the move. We'll have framed preview shapes as well, and they are gonna be updated framed shapes. It implicitly has any time. This should actually be updated framed preview shapes, and the type is gonna be array of shape imported. Done. So we are even saving this now. The question is good if it's getting saved. How are you gonna be rendering it? So time to go to a renderer, and when we have the renderer here, so we are actually getting the interaction. Once we have the interaction, we render the shapes. Is this enough? Just passing this. So render shapes ctx shapes are gonna be interaction dot, well, we don't really have that. Interesting. So this is for the drawing, sorry. This is the overlay section, and render preview shapes. Just a sec. Only when we move, at that time the value is gonna be there. Isn't the drag offset here? We already calculated the value, so the preview belongs to all. That's fine. If interaction if that's triple equals to move, ultimately if we are actually moving, in that case render shapes ctx shapes are gonna be interaction dot framed preview shapes. Will it work? So what we are doing, that we are rendering the shapes separately, we are rendering the preview shapes, rendering shapes separately, and the delay is gonna be really less. So hopefully it's gonna work. Something is still up. Frame shapes rendering. Okay, fine. Once the frame shapes are actually rendering, so inside this I have to stop calling it now anymore. Frame shape rendering. Frame shape rendering, drawing diamond. Literally, what are you telling me? Drawing diamond. Diamond is being drawn again. But if that's actually being drawn again, what am I missing here? Render shapes, preview shapes. I just passed the preview shapes. Passing the values of the preview shapes. What is missing now? Framed preview shapes. No. Framed preview shapes. What will it have? Let's see what value it has. because framed preview shapes may not have. This is wrong. Why? Because framed preview shapes, we are rendering all the preview shapes. So let's check out the value. This should not be done here, that is right. I knew it from the beginning, it would take time. It's not as simple as it sounds. Preview. Alright, copy paste interaction. Okay, that interaction is there. Empty. Reload the page. Never expected it to be empty, but we will see why. Wow, insane. Why is the value empty? No, 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 no. This is empty from the beginning. Okay, fine. Not a big problem. So ultimately, whenever we are saving it, this section never runs. Interesting. Let's do one thing. Interesting. This part is never running. Just once it runs, it does run once. When it actually runs, so at that time what am I doing? It needs to be done here. Yeah, come on, am I crazy? So frame shapes, not really, doesn't matter where it is, it's gonna be fine. Frame preview shapes. Let's see. we have frame preview shapes too. That's what I wanted. So if I have them, I'm saving it here. Interesting. So if I'm saving it here inside this, so when I start moving the mouse, so this is where the problem is. Hopefully I'm getting that here itself too. CLG interaction dot frame preview shapes, line number 30. Empty. Use move shape is initially we get 2, and then next time onwards it becomes empty as we move. Great. So it becomes an empty array. Update preview shape because of this. Great. So we would have done it like this. Initially it had the same values, and later we just simply change this. Or we are saving the value here at the end, right? Either we save it directly here or we save it here. Frame the preview shapes. Why is the value getting like becoming an empty array? Obviously it becomes an empty array, because how can you just save something that is outside this? Ultimately doesn't matter what I have, just write here the value of updated frame the preview shapes. That will definitely be empty, that is for sure. So let's try this thing out. Forget about the page, I'm just simply writing the comments. It's just to identify them well. Okay, that's good. But the value should never be changing, so ultimately if I make the empty array, it should always remain an empty array as expected. So let's get rid of this. The second thing is that the first thing, that is whenever we are updating this, you cannot get the values outside. That is the first thing that you have to keep in mind. Fine. If that cannot be done, so what we are doing here, interaction.preview shapes.map frame to preview shapes. We are just simply changing the value of frame to preview shapes.map this, and then we are getting the offset, and we are just simply returning the value, so that's getting changed automatically. And so now drawing objects, we are getting it again. Frame shapes that are actually coming from frame to preview interaction. That's not needed. So frame to preview shapes.map, we have to just simply change them, and changing them directly, so that's being done as well. Are we really changing the value of it? interaction dot frame preview shapes, then we are just simply mapping through that. So if the value actually gets changed directly, so why are we just updating it here in reassigning the value? That simply means it doesn't work directly first. Then I have to check this thing out, but at the end of the day this just simply returns an array. The value cannot really be changed directly, that is for sure. So I'll be back here and interaction dot framed preview shapes, interaction pointer refs dot interaction ref dot current is gonna be equals to dot interaction and updated frame shape. Updated frame shape returns what? Framed preview shapes is gonna be updated. Framed preview shapes. First of all, we are updating it here, and after that, it's getting updated here as well. $410, $550, $582. $410, $632. It always remains the same. Now we have to check whether the value actually gets changed or not, right? Okay, so this part is done. Now the only thing that I need to check that is whether the value is actually being changed or not. So if I want to check the value whether it's being changed here or not, so for that thing I need to log here pointer interaction current. Same thing needs to be logged here. Let's do it. Come on, haven't really removed it. That's insane, yeah. That's fine. Wrap them in a selection, start moving. Yeah, we have to. These are the lines that we have, these are the values that we have. Time to check the things. So there are no group shapes, that is for sure. Preview shapes, there is one, and 213, 214. So the value of the y definitely changed. Width and height remains the same. They are the preview shapes. How about framed preview shapes? 402 say 50s, 517, 402, 274, 571, 200. It did not change. Let's move it. Thirty 78. This, the value of this is never changing. Interesting. (402) 274. So we are not able to update it for some reason. Why? That simply means this does not work. Updating the value here, it doesn't have any effect even on pointer reps. Interesting. Time to give it to the AI and see why it doesn't work. Why doesn't this work? The main issue is that you are updating inside the map, but then overwriting it again immediately afterward. Since both assignments get the same old interaction object, the second assignment discards the framed previous change you just made. Come on. Sorry. I'm sorry, I'm crazy. We are just using the same interactions here. Pointer f dot interaction dot current preview shape. But there's this thing that preview shape does not exist on type none. So in that case, we'll have to make sure that we are doing it only when that interaction dot type. This is the first thing, so we are getting the interaction over here, and pointer f dot time to check the values again. Just a sec. So we have framed shapes, this framed shapes, this 539 to 77, so ultimately it remains the same again. Hopefully it's the same at the beginning as well. So 539 to 77, we have to fix something. Interaction, updated shapes. Let me see if there are errors, because I'm done figuring out the things. Okay, let's do one thing. Give me the code, I'll check. Give me the corrected version. We'll see what it does. Let's see. Here we are. So updated frame to preview shapes, interaction dot preview shapes. Once it has this, then it will not work. We tried doing this, didn't we? Earlier we tried to do the same, but the result was the same. To check it, what we can actually do, let's try this thing out. Oh wow, it's working. Again, we'll fix exactly why it's behaving the wrong way. So probably in our code there was a bug earlier. So it's going with the same way. It's just simply having the updated shape and the interaction and all. And after that, we tried doing this earlier. Probably we had some kind of bug. So what it is actually doing here, that selected shapes, interaction section, this, and then shape.type frame, shape.type, that's fine. Updated shape, it's just simply gonna loop through that and will return with the value. So even if you are changing something inside that, it definitely changes. Okay, that's good to know that. So frame shape I'm gonna be getting, we get the offset, we just simply change the offset, we return it, the job is done. Okay, good, not bad. Now the second thing is that, let's get rid of these things. So the next thing that is here, when we move, it moves like this, so we have to fix this. So the reason behind it is that we are not really updating the value correctly. So let's update the value right now. So when it comes to pointer up, on pointer up we update the values. So selection actions on pointer up. So over here we are not really doing it here, so where are we doing it actually? On pointer up. If the type is equals to select, we need to have What's the issue? If there are any, that's fine. Just a sec. The only thing that we are missing, that we are not saving the value properly on pointer up. Set shapes, the current shape, we are creating it. How is this being created? When we are creating this, we are passing all these things in there. This is when we are drawing, not when we are moving. So on pointer up, we are pushing the history directly. Interesting. First of all, we need to save, then we need to push the history. This is the first thing, and the second thing is that set shapes. We have the preview map. So shape preview shapes map. Introduction dot preview shapes dot. Oh, come on, do it. Interaction dot framed preview shapes dot map when we return. Okay, that's right. So we have the map for both. Once we have map for both, so we are gonna be updating it, and as we are updating it, just not gonna be this simple. So bhai, we are gonna do what? We have the frame preview shapes. So what we are actually doing, that if earlier what we were doing, that if preview map had the shape ID, then we were returning this. Otherwise so it was already returning there, that's fine, but depending on the need, right? So if shape dot type, if that's triple equals to frame, then I'm gonna be updating it like this, else I'm gonna be updating it like this, just like this. And over here return if that equals to frame. Think about it, man. Even if that's equals to frame, that doesn't really matter. Sorry, this logic is not gonna run. What is the issue? That's fine. This is where we need to have the logic. So what is gonna be that logic? The logic is pretty we have the shape. Once we have the shape, so we have to check whether that shape has frame ID or not. As simple as that. If shape has frame ID and that frame ID has some value, in that case return, what do we have to return? Framed preview shapes map and shape dot frame ID, and we can even return this. What is the problem? Framed preview shapes map string expression not callable. dot get shape dot frame id. What is the problem? Undefined is not assignable, so shape, that's actually undefined. In the remaining cases, what do we have to do? In the remaining cases, we have to use preview shapes map dot get shape dot id shape. What we are doing here, that if a shape has the frame id, then that should be updated with this data. If it doesn't have, then they should be updated with this data, and then should be fine. Reload the page. Okay, what are we missing? Even when I set the value, it behaves like that. It always, first of all, what the hell? Just checking a few things by going back. So we are able to move them here and there, right? We are still able to move it. Oh yeah, understood. The thing is that if there is a normal shape, then you can move it here and there, no problem. But if there is a shape that is not being moved well, and that is okay, but the question is why? Normal shape works fine. If that has frame, then this particular logic runs, and when this logic runs, so shape dot frame id. It is telling me that inside a panel, properties panel.tsx, when I try getting the shapes from the selected shape, so shape.id doesn't exist. Cannot reach the properties of undefined id. How is that possible? Just a sec. We have the shape.frame id. Literally, you've got to be kidding me. Shape.frame id exists. In that case, we have to get it from the shape.id. Not this. So we are actually able to move it. Okay, that's what we wanted. And forget about this. The thing is that this value is changing on the overlay canvas. The previous values we actually need to just simply remove the temporary, so that can be easily done. But yeah, it took a lot of time. Yeah, there are many edge cases here right now. We even have to work on the dragging here and there. But let's get one thing done. That is As soon as I click on something, so as soon as I have framed shape, so when are we doing it? Whenever we are clicking on a shape. This is the last thing, not the last thing, but to make it look good we need to do it, because right now it doesn't seem to be working, of course. So whenever we just click down, at that time get shape at position, so we are setting where is it selected, set selected shape ID. So whenever we are setting the selected shape ID, so somewhere I must be what I must be. So when it comes to the renderer, so here we are just rendering the overlay. Let's come to this one, the render shapes. We have to skip it, right? So whenever we are we have the skip shape IDs, and the skip shape IDs are what? If the moving resizing this, then IDs of the preview shapes, otherwise okay, that's fine. One more thing, IDs of preview shapes is fine, but IDs of frame, not just that, just a sec, we need to change the logic of this. These are the skip shape IDs, so the render should not be rendering the shapes we have to get the frame, rather the selected frame right now. So we have the shapes, get the selected frames. Once you have the selected frames, just make sure that any shape that has those selected frames should not be visible. Okay, fine. Here we are, selected frames. That's gonna be equals to interaction dot preview shapes. अरे भाई preview नहीं, ठीक है. Const is a transform interaction, and that's gonna be equals to this. Yeah, so if it is a transform interaction, then we are gonna be doing this, and this particular section. So one more thing we need to do, that is whatever we are doing here, if it is not a transform interaction, no way, we need to have it anyhow. So what can we do if it is a transform interaction? Interaction dot preview shapes. Let's create a function, and we'll do this thing there. That would be better, because we need to have more logic in here. So to even make it simple, I'm gonna say one thing, that bro, I can do something like this. I can actually literally have a function, and that's just gonna return the value that you need. Okay, so what do we need to do now? So first of all, and then later we'll just move this function somewhere else, but const frames or selected frames, we need to get the selected frames once we have them. So preview shape, do we have preview shapes? We don't really have them. So interaction dot preview shapes, yeah, preview shapes dot filter shape, if shape dot type, if that's triple equals to frame, then that is a frame, And not only that, I just want to get their id. So map, I'm gonna be getting the shape again, and from there I just want to get the shape.id. Once we have this, so we have selected frames IDs right now. And not just that, selector frames IDs don't okay, that's fine. We have selected frames IDs and selector frames IDs. Let's get a set as well. Now it's gonna be too much in that case, so let's do one thing. Let's just have selector frames here because I don't wanna complicate this any further. So let's just go with this much. And selected shape const. What is the problem? Eh? Oh, sorry. Selected shape IDs. Selected frames IDs. That's gonna be equivalent to selected frames dot map shape dot id. I'm gonna create a set over here so that we only have the unique values here. Once this is done, then what is the next thing that we have to do? Once we have the selected frame IDs, then we have to return, right? So one more thing that needs to be done when we are actually returning the shapes from here. Return interaction dot preview shapes skipped IDs we have to return from here. And when it comes to skipped IDs, so that's actually gonna be an array, and interaction dot preview shapes dot preview shapes, all the selected shapes. Okay, so preview shapes for each. Skipped IDs. So this is the first thing, and we have to skip more. Skipping more in the sense, what is the next thing that we have to skip? So this is the first thing, and the second thing is that we have to loop through what? We have to go through interaction dot framed shapes. We don't really have it. We'll only have the frame shape when we are moving. So if we are moving, interaction dot type, if that's equals to move, in that case interaction dot framed preview shapes dot for each I'll get shape, and skipped IDs dot push. So not like this, there's gonna be even more logic. What do we have to check? Because there can be many frames, so we have to check whether the frame is actually selected or not. Response shape is the selected frame. Because we are talking about the frame with preview shapes, right? So ultimately I'm gonna be getting a framed shape. So I have to check whether that particular framed shape is actually selected or not. So if selected framed shapes IDs dot has the ID of frame shape, अरे यार framed shapes, okay, dot ID. So if selected frames IDs wrong, framed shape dot frame ID if that's triple equals to, yeah, what did I do earlier? That's should be frame ID. Now this is fine. So if selected frames dot IDs has framed shape dot frame ID, it can be undefined. That's right. So if framed shape it itself doesn't have the framed shape dot frame ID, then why are we even doing it? So let's return from here. And in the remaining case, if it actually has the frame ID, so that becomes the selected frame is selected frame. And if the current shape is actually is selected frame, then we have to if return if is selected frame, in that case wait, so we have a for each over here, whatever we return, if is a selected frame, so the frame that I got, the shape that I got, if selected frame shape, in that case what do we have to do? Skip the IDs dot push framed shape dot ID. So once we have this here, it's actually gonna be returned. I'll keep it inside a function later, so for now I just wanna check it. Even nothing is working well. What we missed, even we are not able return skipped IDs. What is the problem? This is something we have to still fix the logic. There is some issue with this. What could that be? We just have a function that does the job. Selected shapes. Now we have to just simply check it as well. Okay, so this part is never running. Interesting. So this part is never running. Simply means this function is never running. Never, no. Oh my god, literally I thought it would work, but this function is not getting called directly, so that simply means I have to call it directly. There is something called immediately invoked functions, so I need to use them, but how can that be done? Cut immediately invoked functions, so it's actually like this, and that is it. So right now I'm actually using immediately invoked functions, so it's gonna be called here automatically. Alrighty everybody, we did this. The thing is that I wasn't using immediately invoked functions, and because of that thing this particular function wasn't really being invoked here, so just use that, and the remaining logic was already right. So now congratulations, finally. How long it took here, I don't know. Even there are many things that are yet to be done. 2 hours, around 3 hours. Crazy logic. So now what is happening, that I can select the shapes. I can first of all group them. So these are the grouped ones right now, and they look like this. And the another thing is that I can just have the images, any image for that sake, and I can actually create a frame, wrap in a frame. So the frame is gonna look like this. We can just simply move the frame here and there. We can move the group as well here and there. There was a problem with the group or the frame, I don't know. So something is up, still up, but group selection, the group doesn't cause issue. Framing is the problem probably, but okay, they are just some simply some bugs that can easily be resolved after debugging, but at least the overall logic is ready. Come on, we can so when it comes to properties panel, that's causing the issue. We'll check that thing out later, but as for right now, again I'm gonna check this functionality first. Wrap in a frame, we are able to move here and there. We can resize the frame only, so even if the frame is this big. Okay, this is the issue that I'm getting over and over. Let's resolve this. So properties panel, so let's check this thing out. What's the issue? Properties panel. It is simply gets the error from here. Okay, so shapes dot filter selected has the, so selected is gonna be understood, probably. So selected actually comes from here. Selected has the selected shape ID. So once we actually click a shape ID, a shape can never be selected until unless it actually has the shape ID. Understood? So what can we do? What can we do? Once we actually select any image, so we have to remove the frame, or we have to just make it null. The thing is that over here what is happening, that I have these two images, two shapes, right? I framed them. Arey bhai, okay, so I'm gonna be wrapping them in a frame. Now if I move the frame, that is okay. These two shapes, they have the frames in them. Okay, so if I move this shape here, what the hell? Shape dot id. Okay, shape dot id doesn't exist. Shape. No. Array 0. We have 3 shapes. We have okay, that's fine. Rectangle, diamond. These two become undefined. Why? Think about it. Whenever the pointer up happens after moving, what are you doing? Pointer up after moving. Pointer up, pointer up, pointer up. Move, pointer up. Here we are. This is the logic. Is this fine? Until unless we move the entire frame, that just simply comes back to that. So it doesn't matter where you keep it, it's gonna come back to this one. Okay, what do we actually have to do? That is, whenever we are saving it, so if those values are there, that's fine. If they're not there, I'm just simply gonna be returning this. They will always have that value. Okay, something can be done here. What can that be? If that belongs to a shape, that should still be, even if that is a framed shape, that doesn't mean I should not be able to move it here and there specifically. That's right. So what can we do? Suppose I moved everything together, so it reached here. So what is happening, that when we are moving it together, so it's fine, but when I want to do it space for the specific shape, it doesn't work. So what I have to do, that is, if selected shape is only 1 at that time, I have to enable that functionality. So how can we get the values of selected shapes? And I think I don't have them. So const selected, no, it will not work, because even if we have the frame, that is also one selected shape, so that's insane. In that case, let's just have the first of all selected shapes. Const selected shapes IDs, and that's gonna be used selected shapes IDs, just like this. And is this gonna be alright? I'll have to check. So what I'm actually gonna do here, that is, if selected shapes IDs dot length, that's triple equals to 1, and framed preview shape, or I can say even better, we have a framed preview shape. If we don't have them, then they should be running. It only runs when the then this particular part never runs. So what is the problem? If frame ID exists there, I cannot move it separately. That's right. So only one thing can be done, and what is that? As soon as I select a shape, I have to remove the frame ID from there, from the shape. The logic is right. So whenever the pointer down actually happens, pointer down, whenever we select any shape, this way, and we are setting the selected shape IDs. That's gonna be preview.shape, right? That's fine. Just in here we have to do one more thing, that is we are getting the shapes over here, and we are getting the shapes again on pointer down. Which one's gonna work? On pointer down we are directly getting the shapes from the store. We don't really need to do that. We can directly get the values from here as well, because when we click pointer down, we can only click pointer down after drawing something, and if something has already been drawn, so we will get the what shapes here. So set selected shapes IH, that's gonna be just selected shapes IH, just like this. This is the first thing. Second thing is that constant set shapes. If we face the errors, we will see store. I'm still gonna have it there, so if we face some issues, I'm gonna be uncommenting this. But what I think that once the image is actually drawn, so when I click pointer down, by that time rendering should automatically happen, so it should not be problematic, but we'll see. And over here, if the shape is selected, then set shapes and preview which shape we have, right? In that case, preview shapes and preview shapes dot map shape, and if shape dot id triple equals to preview hit shape dot id. In that case we have to do something, otherwise we have to just simply return the shape and the shape and frame id, that's going to be equals to null. Can the frame id be null? Hopefully yes. So frame ID, think about it. Where are we storing the frame ID? Frame ID is the part of the shapes. Let's go to the types. Frames. How about the other shapes? Let's go to the base shape. Frame ID can definitely be null. That's great. That's what I wanted. So we are setting it to this. Now it's fine. So at least I should not be facing the issue. Great. We still have to work on many things, like as soon as I removed it, I have to remove it from the preview shape as well. That's the first thing, and from the frame actually. So but ultimately overall, if I move it, it is moving. I can even what the yeah, understood. So the thing is that if one shape is selected, we are selecting the another one. Okay, let's do one thing. As soon as I click a shape, if that belongs to the frame, I'm gonna be removing it from there as well. Yeah, once shape is actually selected, that doesn't really belong to any frame as such. So Now frames, we do have that, right? Frames means that particular shape. So this is done. This is the first thing that we need to do. If the shape dot id equals to preview hit shape, what is the preview hit shape over here? The shape that we are hitting. If this is so, then do this, else this particular part. The next thing that we have to do, that is let's change the logic a bit here. First of all, if shape dot, that shape that I have typed, if that triple equals to frame, so we have to do something. Let's return the shape as of right now, no problem as such. So if that is equals to frame, so what do we have to do? So if that's actually equals to frame, so we have to remove the that particular shape id from there. So dot 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 shape and child id is gonna be equals to, now shape dot child ids dot filter id, and if id is not equals to preview hit shape dot I. So this is what we are doing over here. We are just simply removing it from there as well. And lastly, if the type is not equals to frame, then let's go with this logic. Alright, I think this should be fine. So if the type is equals to frame, so we are updating the frame itself, and if the type is not equals to, and updating the frame in the sense, if the preview hit shape is not equals to the id of the child, then that's gonna be filtered. That simply means this preview hit shape will not be the part of the child IDs anymore. Apart from this particular thing, shape.id, preview hit shape id, if they are equal, so the shape.id and this preview hit shape id, the shape id, this id, okay, that's fine. Then in that case, we are removing the frame id from here, and that's it. So ultimately, as soon as we click an image, click a shape, that will not be part of shape a frame anymore. So we need to make it, we need to write the logic to make a shape to be part of frame. Okay, never mind. As of right now, we are not gonna be facing issues at all. But once I'm not able to move the frame. Just a sec. Okay. Okay, what I did, once I moved it, it is not part of frame anymore. So there's only one in the frame. And if I actually move this as well, now frame doesn't really have anything. So we are able to select the frame. Able to move the frame. So we have to work on this particular part as well. Crazy. Now why isn't the frame moving? That is, we are able to resize the frame. That is really good. But the frame is not moving. So let's go to the use move. When it comes, on pointer move. So is greater than 0, then only this particular part runs. So CLG, this never runs, at least in this particular situation. Yeah, that never runs. And then CLG moving is not running. अरे भाया क्या हुआ? So if moving is not running, then go to selection area, and the shape is actually selected. On pointer down, pointer move, trying to move. So definitely we are trying to move. Once we try to move, then begin interaction. Begin interaction. Trying to move. For loop. Move shape. Then this part it never runs. So here. So the for loop is the problem here. Okay, in the for loop there is something wrong, so let's just simply go into the for loop, string, trying to move, this is never running. That simply means we never have framed preview shape. This logic, child adage. So now we are able to move this. The thing is that why I need to have it, and why were we not able to move the. So one thing is clear that we found the bug, but the thing is that if preview shape dot child, okay, that's fine. If there are no children, this logic was not running, and when this logic was not running, so framed shape preview shape dot child's id just simply gives me that. So there are gonna be no frame the shapes IDs, then there are gonna be no framed shapes. If there are no framed shapes, this logic never runs, and when this logic never runs, then framed shapes will return an empty object, empty array. CLG line number 214. अरे भाई यार मैं कहाँ ढूंढूं 214. अरे हटाओ. The thing is that it was returning from here. That was the problematic thing. So it should not return, because if it returns the overall if something is returned, so the for loop stops, and when the for loop stops, the crazy thing is this, that because of this return here, the overall logic stops. And the thing is that inside a function, if you are calling a return, it will stop the entire function. If inside the I'm actually getting a call, but I'm busy. I'll pick it up later. Okay, so if inside the, just give me a second, huh? Alright everybody, welcome back. So what I was saying, if inside the function, if inside the inside the for loop that's inside the function I return, then will it stop the remaining function execution extension of the loop. Let's see what it says. It depends on which function you are returning from. Return inside the callback, like of map or etc. Returns only from the callback. So it only returns the callback from here. In our case, we were using for each. We were not using for each. We were using this. So it returns only that. Okay, fine. Then return inside for loop const this. Yeah, that's been the problem. This doesn't run. So this is something we have to take care of. So instead of using this, I'd rather like to use for each here. It's good to return here, that's fine, but I'm actually gonna use for each here. Interaction dot for each. What is the issue? Interaction dot preview shapes, the way it was being done earlier. Alrighty, so this should be fine. And same thing, well, I'm not really returning from here, so that's alright, but this is something we have to keep in mind. So coming back to this, we are able to just do it. Now there's another logic that we still have to write, that is the logic of making the shape part of the frame. That is something yet to be done, so we are gonna be doing that soon, but as of right now we are done. Okay, let's try this thing out. Enough. Reload the page. So we can draw a few images here, shapes. I'm in the habit of calling them images. That's not really a good thing. Let's get a real image, this one. So we have it here. We can just simply select and resize them. We can make them part of a group. So this is a group. Again, we can just simply change the colors and all. That's pretty common thing. So this is what we can do. So this is what we've done, and then we can create a frame. We don't have the functionality of ungrouping. We will be doing it later. We can create a frame. So this is a proper frame. Even I have to have proper text over here of the frame, but at the end of the day, once we select it, we are actually able to move these things here and there. Once we are able to select this, we are able to move it here and there. Now we can even resize the shape. There's only one thing, that when it comes to a frame, so you can resize the frame, and this way it can actually be done, and you will still have the things over there. And once you actually select a shape, any shape, so that's not the part of frame anymore. So this is something we still have to fix. Like once I hover the shape over the frame, then it should become the part of the frame. So we'll do that, and this is the first thing. And the another thing is that if you resize the group, overall things are gonna be resized, but when you resize the frame, only frame is going to be resized, not other shapes. So this is the first thing. And we can create another frame of these. So it is also possible, if I'm not wrong. Wrap in a frame. So this is the top level frame I have. So we have this inner frame. Now if I actually move, this inner frame is not part of inner frame always remains there. Why? The logic does not support that. Okay, that's fine. We will be taking care of that. But yeah, once we actually move the overall ultimately the logic doesn't support two frames on top of each other, but this is something we still have to work on. So many things we have done, many things are yet to be done. At least we have the basic level functionality now, that we can actually create a frame, and once we have a frame we can move them here and there. Now the next step comes actually if we actually move the shape out of the frame, so that's not the part of the frame anymore, we have to make it the part of the frame again. So this is the functionality that we are going to be working on next, and once this is done, then we will implement subframes functionality. So one frame should be able to have other frames as well. So it's gonna be somewhat like this. Again, this is gonna be implemented after some time. So as for this functionality, easily it's gonna take around 5 hours. So framing, even I worked on this yesterday as well. So yeah, it takes some time. I mean, this is how it works. So never mind, doesn't matter how long it takes. We are gonna be just simply implementing this. Okay, I'll be back soon after a break or something, and then we'll work on this feature more. And let's see, just get it done as soon as possible. I'll be back soon. Until then, bye bye, take care.